Hi there, Chris from TotallyEV, who doing a dedicated audio review of the BMW i5, or more specifically the i5 Touring. If you want a detailed review of the vehicle itself, make sure you check it out on your pop-up banner or by following the links down in the description below. Now to kick things off, we have to talk about its audio configuration. And as standard on the eDrive 40 models, you'll find a 12-speaker Harman Kardon configuration that outputs 205 watts. To be more specific, you have got bass speakers that are found within the front doors, then you've got mid-range and tweeters that are found within each of the four doors, and then mid-range and tweeter that is found within the dashboard. Now, if you want to up the ante, you might want to consider a £1,250 option for the Bowers Wilkins system that outputs 655 watts instead. This, however, will come fitted as standard on the M60 xDrive. Now, it's a little bit contentious as to what BMW UK have actually stated with the i5. See, from my prior experience, there was a little difference between the regular model, the petrol model, and then the electric model. This was the case when I reviewed the BMW i7 with the Bowers Wilkins system instead. Now, indeed over here, the i5 is currently listed at 18 speakers, but as far as I'm aware, I actually think it has 17 speakers. That's because there are no bass speakers underneath the front seats, and therefore there is a subwoofer in the boot instead, therefore reducing the tally from 18 to 17. Now, to expand on this, I'll just go around the cabin and tell you where I found the speakers. Towards the front doors, you have got the bass, mid-range and tweeters. Then within the dashboard, you have got a mid-range and tweeter driver. Within the rear doors, you've got a mid-range and tweeter. Then towards the headliner, towards the boot, you've also got a mid-range and tweeter. Then I actually heard a lot of low-end rumble coming from the boot, which I can only imagine is the subwoofer. Whereas BMW UK and also the UK configurator actually say 18 speakers. They don't specify a subwoofer, but I think this might be a mistake. If I am wrong, or of course if BMW are wrong, I'll make sure I'll update this video, be it as a note or indeed within the pinned comments. Now, for you to tinker around with the audio drivers, you want to navigate on the 14.9-inch display. And here, with the Bowers Wilkins system, which is on review, I have enabled the Logic 7 surround and taken one notch off the surround intensity. I've then left the treble, bass, and the fader in their default position, but then gone into the 7-band EQ and added a few notches towards the bass and quite a few notches towards the treble EQ. Of course, this is all very subjective, but it's the own settings that I actually found to work the best in terms of my own hearing profile. Now, for you to connect up to the infotainment system, you have got Bluetooth, although you've got the SBC and AC codecs only. If, however, you want higher quality playback, you'll want to plug in your smartphone, and here you'll find that Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are supported over a wired and wireless transmission, which is certainly appreciated. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get on to cabin noise. And here, the objective measurements will be on your screen. For those who are subscribed, you'll be very much aware that at higher speeds, the vehicle has got very low numbers. And indeed, lower is better. And I can say subjectively, that is one of the quietest cabins that I've tested to date, which is a real testament to the overall size of the vehicle and also the insulating material that BMW have used within the i5 Touring. It actually gives you a fantastic serene environment, so much so that sometimes when you're driving at 70 miles an hour, it kind of feels like you're cruising at 20 and 30 miles an hour in comparison to another vehicle. Now, with all that said and done, let's get on to an audio demo. I'll be placing the camera and microphone in different locations within the cabin and playing back a track. It's titled Like Me and it's from Priya J. Now, I appreciate an audio demo over YouTube isn't quite ideal, but I thought to provide it as it gives you a bit of a taster as to what to expect. In terms of my own subjective analysis, as someone who's reviewed over 100 different audio systems that are comprised within vehicles, I can safely say that the Bowers Wilkins system is a notable upgrade over the 12-speaker Harman Kardon configuration, and indeed it does actually do a pretty good job. Although in comparison to other Bowers Wilkins systems out there, such as the ones that are found in Volvo vehicles, the BMW i7, the iX, or the Polestar 3, it doesn't quite keep up. Let me explain. Breaking it down through the sound frequency range, we have to talk about the overall sub-bass experience. And yes, it's certainly there. The low-end resonance that you can actually hear and feel within the vehicle is actually pretty impressive. And yes, you have got a good sort of extension towards the lower echelons of the bass tones. I think most bass heads would actually be left pretty surprised as to what the i5 is actually able to produce. The same could be said about the overall mid-bass impact, which is not only controlled, but also plentiful. Here you can actually EQ it a few notches via the infotainment system in order to bring it out a little bit to the foreground. And therefore, if you're listening to EDM, drum and bass, or indeed R&B songs, you'll actually be left pleasantly surprised. However, what isn't as impressive, at least in my opinion, and comparing and contrasting it to other systems out there, namely from Bowers Wilkins, is the overall mid-range, which just feels a little bit recessed and pushed back. Now you might be quick to say, why didn't you adjust the EQ via the infotainment system when it comes to the mid-range? And that's because when you're adding quite a few notches over here, it does take away from the overall accuracy and gives you somewhat of a veiled and odd sound, which is not what the artist is trying to reproduce. As a result of this, I could only add 1 or 2 notches at most via the 7-band EQ, and therefore just had to accept that there is a somewhat V-shaped sound signature, which isn't exactly necessarily a bad thing, but is not exactly what you might come to expect when you're coming to a Bowers Wilkins system, which is really notable for the overall mid-range accuracy. Now, as for the highs, they actually do extend very well towards the front and rear of the cabin, and that is due to the fact that you have got those dedicated tweeters, and here you can actually EQ it quite substantially via the infotainment system in order to get that extra bit of zing or that sort of toe-tapping feeling. Now, in terms of the overall soundstage, it is actually also very impressive. The overall instrument separation is there, thanks to the fact that you've got numerous drivers around the cabin, and the overall soundstage reproduction is actually pretty good. Although this is only notable when you do enable the Logic 7 surround and take 1 notch off the center EQ. The reason I did this is because without it, you get a bit more of a reference sound, but you don't get that sort of fulfilling cabin experience. But with it enabled and on its default configuration, or by adding a few notches to it, it does give you a little bit of that fishbowl effect, which is not exactly pleasurable. And for audiophiles out there, you'll be quick to recognize that the tune doesn't sound exactly what it is supposed to be like in comparison to listening, for example, from a set of floor standing or bookshelf speakers. What I'm trying to say over here is that the overall soundstage is there, specifically with that Logic 7 surround option enabled, and by tailoring it to your own music tastes, you'll actually find that it actually does a good job. Now, ultimately, what I'm trying to convey within this review is that the Bowers Wilkins system is a notable upgrade, and it's certainly something that you might want to consider splashing out on if you are someone who likes listening to music and you are somewhat of a budding audiophile. As a result of this, it gets a performance award. However, it isn't exactly as impressive as some people might expect if you compare and contrast it with what else you can find out there on the market, including from Bowers Wilkins themselves, be it in other vehicles which are comparable, or of course vehicles that are in a completely different sort of class, be it in terms of price or indeed the type of category. Nonetheless, I just thought to share my own experiences of the vehicle and of course of its audio system, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. Now, if you have enjoyed this detailed independent review, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing and hitting that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.